Welcome. Our webinar today is exploring the power of collaboration in open education. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to see a warm response to this timely topic and its global reach. Today, the webinar comes to you in partnership with the Council of Australian University Librarians, or CAUL. Pressbooks is privileged to support CAUL's members in their digital publishing activities. And earlier this year, CAUL was awarded the 2024 Open Collaboration Award by OE Global. We'll hear a little bit more about that award shortly, and we'll learn about some of the phenomenal work that's happening within the CAUL community and the ways that they are turning collaborative activities into remarkable open educational resources. This is a uniquely global webinar. Our panelists are literally spanning the globe. We have representation today from North America, Australia, and Aotearoa, New Zealand. We will begin with each panelist briefly introducing themselves. I need to remember to put up the slide of our panelists. And we've asked each panelist to introduce themselves and where they're from. So I will begin. I am Julie Curtis. I'm the Vice President of Growth and Strategy at Pressbooks. I will be moderating today's session. And I'm joining you today from Beaverton, Oregon, which resides on the traditional lands of the Atfalati or Kalapuya peoples. Let's go ahead and go next to Ash Barber.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Ash Barber. I'm the OER Collective Project Officer with CAUL, and I'm zooming in today from Garnerland, which is Adelaide, Australia.
Thank you. Kate Tickle.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Kate. I'm the Director of Strategy and Analytics at the Council of Australian University Librarians, and I'm joining you from Yucca Bear Country in southeast Queensland on the Gold Coast.
Thank you. Alan Levine.
Hello, good whatever time of day it is. Alan Levine. I am outside of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, which is also traditional lands of the Nehiyawak, Soto, Dakota, Lakota people, and the Métis Nation. And I am Director of Community at Open Education Global.
Thank you, Alan. Alice, would you go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice Luchford. I'm the Open Education Librarian at James Cook University in Queensland, Australia. And I'm joining you today from the lands of the Jayabal and Jarawa people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the other Kate Thompson. Oh, Kate, you're on mute.
After all that, on mute. Kia ora koutou, ko Kate Thompson, Kuingoa. He kaitiaki puka o ke o tākou whakaihu waka, no otipoti oho. So hello everybody, I'm Kate Thompson. I'm a subject librarian at the University of Otago and I live in Dunedin.
Thank you. Tracy.
Kia ora koutou, ko Tracy Thomas, toku inua no Ahatereria o me Arana o Kutupuna, kei te noho o ki Tamaki Makoro Aotearoa. I'm Tracy Thomas and I'm a research services advisor at the Waipapa Taumata Row, the University of Auckland in New Zealand.
Thank you. Sarah.
Kia ora koutou, ko Sarah Roberts tōku ingoa, he kai whakahaere ratonga ako e te wharewananga o Waitaha. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Roberts. I'm the Manager of Learning and Teaching at the University of Canterbury in Otautahi, Christchurch, New Zealand.
Thank you. And Rachel?
Tēnā koutou katoa, he kaitiaki huawaere a koe aho ki te wharewananga o Waitaha, ko Rachel Doherty tōku ingoa. Hi everyone, I'm the Open Education Librarian at University of Canterbury in Otautahi, Christchurch, and my name's Rachel Doherty.
Thank you. Julian.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Julian Paquet. I'm a lecturer, teaching-focused academic in the Department of Biochemistry and Chemistry at La Trobe University.
Thank you. And last but not least, Stephen.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen from Trobe University. I'm the Coordinator of Open Education and Scholarship here, and I'm coming from the Wurundjeri Land of the Wurundjeri people.
Thank you so much. So as we get started, a quick housekeeping note. As you've been doing, feel free to use the Zoom chat to introduce yourself, and you can share comments and questions that are directed to the full audience during the webinar. If you have questions specifically for the panelists, it would be helpful if you use the Zoom Q&A function just to make sure we know exactly where those questions are. We'll be watching both, but the Q&A tool is helpful. We know that there tends to be a lot of lively discussion during these webinars, and we encourage that. So we will look forward to seeing that parallel conversation happening. We also want to get a sense of who's joining us and how you come into the conversation about open education. So we invite all of our audience to take a very quick interactive poll using Mentimeter. You can enter with going to menti.com and entering this code, or you can use the QR code and do it on a mobile device. And it's 3 quick questions. Tell us where you're joining from. We decided to use a word cloud style of this because of how diverse the audiences are from. And so give us the country, your state or province, your city. We just would love to see where you're coming from. We also are asking to know your primary role. If you wear multiple hats at your institution, you can answer with multiple items. So we can see what people are doing, what keeps them busy, and then also your experience level with open education. So taking just a moment here, we will see there's a lot of as we would say here, the down under representation here. And also from other places as well. It's great to see the widespread, and we're grateful to have people across a variety of different time zones participating. So thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to our next slide. We'll see who is joining us. Lots and lots of librarians, not surprising given that it is CAUL. And a few other administrators, instructional designers. And next time I'll have to ask who are the other, I guess, although other could be the other duties as assigned. There's a lot of things that people do in this community. All right, and let's see, still a few more. All right, we'll go on to the next one in the interest of time. So what's your experience level with open education? So we've got a nice spread here. So some people who are on the newer end of the spectrum, a lot of people who've been doing it for a little while and consider themselves intermediate, and then we've got some experts as well. So thank you for sharing that. Going back to our slides, we also want to just ensure that we are speaking the same language. I want to just put a couple of definitions out there. Open education refers to a worldwide movement around using resources and tools and practices that employ a framework of open sharing to improve educational access and effectiveness. And open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials that are freely available and include permissions that allow others to use and distribute, modify, and adapt them. And with these definitions, the notions of sharing and reuse lend themselves to our primary topic today, which is the power of collaboration in support of open education. One of the things that I love about the open education community is the generosity with which people share their time and their expertise, their willingness to collaborate and create amazing things. One of the open education facts of life I've observed over more than a decade working in this community is that collaboration puts seemingly impossible things within reach. That doesn't mean that collaboration is easy, because it isn't. It takes time. It can be complex. Coordinating is hard. People often want different things. And frankly, we can all move faster alone. But collaboration can unlock that magical equation of 2 + 2 is 5 when the outcome is greater than the sum of its parts. Collaboration can bring connection and accountability, different perspectives, representation, skill sets, areas of expertise. It can create new avenues for inclusiveness and result in work that better serves its intended audiences. And collaboration can increase momentum, and it can lead to more resources, pooled resources, coming together and supporting the work. And so today we're going to showcase some outstanding examples of what collaboration makes possible. We'll hear some of the advice or secrets of success from the people who are doing this work well. So I'm going to stop talking and turn things over. I've asked Kate to begin and talking a little bit about CAUL and how collaboration supports CAUL's goals for open education and why this work is important for your region. So Kate, on to you.
Thanks very much, Julie. We can have the next slide. Thank you. So good morning or good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on the OER Collective before I hand over to the real stars of the show today. So CAUL is the peak collegiate body for the leaders of university libraries in Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. And as an organisation, we facilitate connection and collaboration to achieve strategic outcomes at scale in priority areas for the university library sector. And you'll see that my colleague Ash is going to drop some links in the chat as I'm speaking. The OER Collective began as a project in one of our strategic programs and it launched in 2022. This year, we transitioned it from a pilot project into a service. It aligns with our current strategic focus on open educational resources and embodies the ways that we work as an organisation. Our strategy and really everything we do at CAUL prioritises collaboration and sector-wide approaches. We were really delighted to be awarded the Open Education Award in the collaboration category because it's a topic that is central to what we do at the collective. The collective doesn't just leverage collaboration, it is collaboration. I'll have the next slide, thanks, Julie. So we were very deliberate in choosing the word collective to name this initiative, and that's because we wanted it to be a shared enterprise. It was collaboratively designed and developed by a cross-institutional project team specifically to nurture collaboration. It is even collaboratively funded. So I realise I haven't yet told you what the collective is. So essentially, it's a service designed to foster open textbook publishing in Australia and Aotearoa with an emphasis on collaborative authoring and collegial learning. So providing a shared Pressbooks platform is one key part of what we do. And in fact, it was the impetus for the initiative. But we quickly realised that it needed to be much more than a platform. While the central network and the fact that Pressbooks is so easy to use have been key to our success, it's the capability building, the grant program, and the community that we've developed to support publishing via Pressbooks that have been the critical success factors in significantly growing open textbook publishing and developing maturity in the region. And I think it's those things that will sustain it as well. I'll have the next slide. Thanks, Julie. So collaboration happens across the collective at all levels. At its core, it's a collaboration between 42 university libraries in 2 countries. Collaborative teams create the books. The community of practice is a collaboration of practitioners learning from each other. Ash and I liaise with a network of institutional contacts to facilitate key processes, and Ash works closely with a working group comprised of library staff from across participating institutions to plan our events and get input into training and resource needs. Governance and decision-making are also collaborative activities facilitated via the cross-institutional governance group. The collective is essentially a collection of collaborations. And that collaboration has really paid off. In the 32 months since we launched, 48 books have been published by participating institutions, with many more in development, and we've awarded more than $92,000 in grants. Julie made the point that we can often move faster alone, but I firmly believe that working at this kind of scale and bringing our CAUL member institution staff together to approach OER collaboratively has allowed the libraries to achieve much more than they could have achieved separately and much faster. Most libraries in Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand don't have dedicated OER staff, and many don't have established service models for OER development. So centralised support, training, infrastructure and grants are critical for these institutions. And we've built all of this through the collective and through collaboration. As Julie said, collaboration really does put impossible things within reach. I think that's a lovely way to put it, Julie. So that's it from me. I think the team have got great insights for you, so I'm going to sit back and learn from them as well.
Thank you, Kate. Before we go on to the team, I also want to ask Alan Levine, who joins us from OE Global, from your organization's worldwide perspective on the work of open education. What do you see as unique and award-worthy in CAUL's approach?
Well, us at OE Global, we actually don't get to have any say in this. This is a process where nominations come in from anybody in the open education community, and they are reviewed and evaluated by a committee of previous board winners. So they look at these, and specifically with CAUL, the speed at which you just heard they were a pilot and how they have grown to such broad participation from so many institutions. It's something you actually don't see on a national scale or an international scale. And that was one thing that was very important. Also, that they obviously are involved in not only OER production, but capacity building in the region, as we see from the sort of services that they provide. So it's this rapid growth, the breadth of the impact that were noted by our reviewers, and also that it's a powerful movement driven by librarians. And I've seen that significantly, because when I started in this work, I'd never even heard the word OER librarian. And the fact that it has become such a key role has been very effective. And as far as collaboration, anybody who's done Pressbooks know that you don't do these things without collaboration. I guess technically you could, but they're so much better when it has that kind of multiple involvement. And just to put it in some perspective, CAUL shared an award this year with a different kind of project, the Higher Education for Good, spearheaded by Catherine Cronin and Laura Chernowich, that was really driven by looking at the world situation with a lot of things. But 2 years ago, the Spark Librarian organization was also recognized, and again for sort of that broad reach that goes beyond the single institution or region. So so many things that came out in this nomination that said that this was, I think, for our reviewers, easy to pick as a collaboration award.
Thank you so much, Alan. All right, now we get to hear from the project teams, as Kate said, the real stars of our show today. We're going to start. So I've asked each project team, I should say, to briefly introduce themselves, their OER project, and then talk a little bit about how collaboration has resulted in them being able to produce something that was different and better than if they hadn't had that essential element. So we're going to start with Alice.
Thanks so much, Julie. So as I said earlier, I'm the Open Education Librarian at James Cook University in Queensland, Australia. And it's an absolute pleasure to join you today and to share aspects of the collaboration and the story of our collaboration with you. I guess if I had to summarise the project, we basically see that our Australian Legal Research Skills Guide exemplifies many of the benefits of open education resources that we've been talking about already this morning, and Julie and Kate have both touched on many of those this morning in the slides. We see our resource as not only reuse of existing valuable content, but it's also a significant collaboration and iterative expansion of Creative Commons licensed material that was already out there. So just to briefly set the scene for anyone joining us from outside of Australia today, it probably comes as no great surprise that Australian legal textbooks are still largely in the domain of commercial publishers. However, there is a wealth of legal materials such as cases and legislation that is freely available in Australia on our various government websites and through our Australasian Legal Information Institute. So partly our project was aimed to help law students discover and navigate legal research, and it has evolved into a surprisingly joyful success story that is now in its third year. Law librarians across Australia have worked collaboratively to address a gap in the Australian legal publishing ecosystem, and as we've talked about already this morning, have very generously shared their expertise and knowledge to benefit legal researchers in not only Australia, but beyond. So I guess where did it all begin? It was back in 2022, as many of these projects were kicking off around Australia. Here at JSU, we were seeking to create a foundational ready reference tool for our first year law students. And we conducted an environmental scan and realised there was a bit of a need that was widely held by numerous other Australian universities as well. And it made sense to collaborate and to create a resource that would be useful for us all. And we wanted the resource to be openly licensed, institution neutral and scalable. They were our first three criteria that we were working with. We'd seen that our colleagues at the University of Queensland had developed a set of web-based legal research modules that were already available under a CC license. And they provided a really solid foundation of the content we were looking for. We were already familiar with the Pressbooks interface here at our own institution and also via the collective. So we were able to mobilise that idea really quickly and convert the modules to a Pressbook format. Fortuitously, the UQ Law Librarians were also really enthusiastic and the creation of our Legal Research Skills Guide began. We very quickly networked even further afield with other colleagues at a number of other unis, which took us suddenly from a 1 university project to a 7 university project for the first edition of our guide. And this resulted in us being able to represent 5 of the 9 legal jurisdictions here in Australia in that first edition. That first edition was very well received and we were very heartened by that, I guess. And based on that success, we continued on and then produced a second edition in January of this year. And that was able to incorporate an additional contribution from law librarians and academics at the University of South Australia, who became our 8th university to be involved in this lovely project. So continuing on in that theme, as a result of even further networking around Australia, I'm very excited to share that for the upcoming 2025 edition, we'll now have 11 universities represented. So we're welcoming colleagues now from the Edith Cowan University, University of Tasmania, and the Australian National University. And this is particularly exciting news for us as we will now have collaborators from every Australian state and territory jurisdiction represented. And this was one of our key outcomes that we've been working towards for the last 3 years. So in terms, I guess, of how we collaborate together, we meet regularly online via Zoom, because as you can see from the map on the slide, we are from very geographically disparate parts of Australia and in all the different states and territories that we have. And it's a lot further between these universities' sites than many may realise. And another little small challenge we've got at the moment is that here in Australia, we've currently got 5 different time zones that we're operating under. So we're just having to contend with that when we set up meetings and so on. But between meetings, we find that it's very useful to use Microsoft Teams for really quick conversations, just to stay in touch, to ask each other questions, share feedback, and provide any mentoring with our onboarding new librarians that are joining our project. And we keep all of our working files stored in a SharePoint site so that everybody's got access to everything at all times. So I guess, yeah, as I've been mentioning, it's been an absolutely amazing, wonderful, joyful project to be involved with. And I did also want to give a big shout out and acknowledgement to the wonderful work that Kate, Ash, Rani and the team from the CAUL Collective are always doing behind the scenes. The collective hosts this institution neutral resource for us and they support us and provide a lot of congeniality, which has been really instrumental, collegiality, sorry, that has been really instrumental in the successful development of this resource. It has just been so incredibly empowering and wonderful to see the building of open education practice around Australia through this lovely project, and I guess to mentor additional authors that are coming on board with each new iteration of this guide. And it's been just so wonderful to see other peer reviewers coming on board as well, and everybody's been willing to assist in this lovely project. We've been able to continue to publish the new editions on the CAUL Collective, and this has helped us to build familiarity with the Pressbooks platform and build capacity around Australia in that space as well. Recently, we were really delighted to be shortlisted for this year's 2024 OE Global Awards for this particular project. And I guess in the spirit of this presentation theme today, this resource would, of course, not be possible or the success story that it is without the integral collaboration of law librarians, which are at the very heart of this resource. So I guess we see the power and strength of our combined expertise in legal research across our 9 very diverse legal and geographic jurisdictions, which has resulted in an amazing community and a really a bonding experience for us. And we've been able to publish a really key openly available resource for the benefit of all legal researchers here in Australia and beyond. So I guess just to sort of conclude, in terms of impact, the analysis of our usage data for our previous 2 editions has shown that the resources are very popular here in Australia, of course, as our primary audience, but the guide is also being used internationally in Europe, North America, and also particularly in New Zealand. And this year, we were very thrilled to be contacted by a group of New Zealand law librarians who could see the potential in this guide and have now started their own collaboration to adapt this Australian law guide. So I thought that would be a lovely segue to say, stay tuned now for some more information on this, the next group presentation. And we wish the New Zealand group all the best for their forthcoming publication, and we'll stay watching this space. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you, Alice. So we'll turn things over to Kate Thompson and Tracy Thomas to talk about the New Zealand version of the guide.
Thanks, Julie, and thank you for the next slide. And thanks, Alice, for the wonderful introduction. And I'm sure, as you've all heard from her, it's just such an amazing project. And so when I first found out about the Australian Law Guide, I was kind of half joking with my colleague, Richard White, who's the CAUL, Otago's institutional contact for CAUL. I said, oh, wouldn't it be great to do a New Zealand version? And we sort of joked about it a wee bit. But then a few days later, we were in a meeting of OER enthusiasts from around the country, and some of them are also sort of in the law librarian space. And they'd had similar thoughts, and we were all just so excited about it. And we could just instantly see how valuable this would be to adapt it for the New Zealand market. So soon after that, we, the 3 of us who were in the OER group, we pitched it to the New Zealand Law Librarians Association. And that is, in New Zealand, that's made up of law librarians from all sectors. So we've got corporate, government and academic. And they were all really, really encouraging and enthusiastic about it. But they also said, academic law librarians, you can do it, you can do it, you can write it. You know, getting the project off the ground, it was all due to being able to adapt an existing OER and have that opportunity to collaborate with experts. And so, you know, it turned what was a really daunting prospect of doing an OER into something that was really feasible and achievable. And Julie and Alice, you both, you know, talked about how, you know, it's when we get together like that, we can achieve great things. So we have borrowed really heavily from the Australian Law Guide in terms of its sort of structure and layout, and having that framework to get us started has been an enormous help. I'd like to point out or acknowledge all of our collaborators in this project, our co-authors and contributors. We're from all over New Zealand, so that's why I've got a little map there, and we represent all of the universities in this project. So you're going to meet Tracy Thomas in a moment, but we also, and she's from Auckland, but we also have Melanie Lovitch from AUT, Em Pooley from Waikato, Kevin Dovey from Victoria, and Teresa Buller from Canterbury. And we've also got a couple of non-law librarians who are going to help us out with dotting our I's and crossing our T's. That's John Arnold from Canterbury, and Richard White, who's going to be our copyright advisor. He only just found out about that this morning, but he's very happy to do it. So our very first meeting was actually with Alice. We were really keen to understand the project management aspects of their project. And we really wanted to, you know, share our enthusiasm and strengthen those relationships we have with our friends across the ditch. And she shared the ethos that when they were collaborating, that they had decided that, it would be most prudent or most useful if each Australian state's jurisdiction knowledge was authored by the law librarians that work in those places. Now, in New Zealand, we don't have different laws in our regions, but we do all teach differently and we have different strengths and interests in different areas. So we've assigned the writing accordingly, and we are co-authoring about 2/3 of it, I reckon. So our main audience, like the Australian one, is the law students. Here in New Zealand, the LLB program is regulated at a national level by the Council of Legal Education. So even though we're all working from 3 different law schools, we're all trying to achieve, create, successful students with the same skills. And so, our individual efforts are actually all meeting the same goals, that's the same end game. And so it makes really good sense to pool our time and our knowledge and to create this national resource. And we've also seen how popular the Australian one is. And so we're pretty keen to write on those shared tales a bit. So kia ora, thank you very much. I'll pass over to Tracy.
Kia ora koutou, ko Tracy Thomas, tōku ingoa. The University of Auckland had recently joined the CAUL OER collective pilot, and so we used a Pressbook shell for this New Zealand OER as a way for us to upskill in creating an OER so we are better informed about the processes when we're advocating for OERs with our academics. This project is currently a work in progress. Delaying the launch until early 2025 will mean we have the time to review the content and tone and incorporate fresh links to some legal research tools that will be revised early next year. This year, I participated in the 12-week CAUL OER Foundations course, and this has provided valuable practical skills and knowledge that I can apply to this project. So thank you to Ash and CAUL for providing the structure for a lot of collaboration that's been useful in this particular adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we will hear from Sarah Roberts and Rachel Doherty. Let me move on to their project. All right.
Thanks, Julie. Kia ora koutou. I'm here today to talk about a project called He Awa Whiria, Braiding the Knowledge Streams in Research Policy and Practice, which is a book that we have published. A little bit of background for those not in New Zealand. Here in Aotearoa, we work in a bicultural partnership based on our Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed between the Crown and Māori in 1840. So the He Awa Whiria framework, or the Braided Rivers framework, is a methodology combining Indigenous and Western research approaches to support a bicultural approach to policy development, to research initiatives and to practices. So the book outlines 12 case studies of the use of this particular framework in different sectors across Aotearoa. So in the creation of this book, we collaborated with 3 main partners. The first was CAUL, which is the Council of New Zealand University Libraries. This is an advocacy council that has representation from all 8 university libraries in New Zealand. I know everybody in Australia and the States, we're going just 8. So little country, not very many universities. During the COVID lockdown in New Zealand, we experienced firsthand the unhelpful models offered by publishers and the resulting inequity of access to vital resources for our students. So to try and remedy this, the UC Library started down the pathway of supporting the publication of open educational resources. CAUL was approached to help fund a resource as a pilot to show alignment across the sector and to promote the benefits of open. Ultimately, all 8 university libraries committed to funding this project. Our second main collaborator was the Canterbury University Press. So Canterbury University Press is very supportive of open and had been very much so in the past. They'd already made 6 of their publications freely available through our library repository. They gave us a fixed price to publish an OER and agreed to make it freely available online. So CUP oversaw all the really difficult stuff for us. So they collaborated with the editors, they collaborated with the 29 contributors, and they managed the copy editing, formatting, etc. So the outcome of those two major collaborations was that we had a really high quality product. It's useful across multiple sectors in Aotearoa, and it raises the profile of open at a national level. So that sets us on a good path for creating more open collaborative resources. Our third collaboration was with the CAUL Collective, and I'll pass to Rachel to talk about that for you.
Thanks, Sarah. So when I started as the Open Education Librarian in 2022, Sarah and CUP and CONSL had already done all this hard work. I was looking to upskill in my new role, and I also did the OER Foundations course, which Tracy mentioned, which I found to be invaluable as well. And by the end of that year, I had realised that I needed to actually do some work in Pressbooks to get that experience while I was going out talking to people and promoting the use of it. By that stage, How Whiwhiria had been written, and it was ready to be made open access through our research repository in PDF format. So we had a shell available, a Pressbooks shell available through the CAUL Collective, and so it seemed the obvious use of that shell to provide added functionality to the book, and also an opportunity to make it more accessible for use as well. So initially I started adding content from the PDF version as an upskilling activity for myself. I found it helpful to do that, and I also found Pressbooks really intuitive to use, and found that I could make progress quite quickly and get it looking quite good and professional. So I took a few chapters to the Canterbury University Press to show them the possibilities of it and see what they thought, and see if they thought the authors would be open to doing a new edition, and they were very enthusiastic. So I continued in that work, working with them and with the authors through them to produce the Pressbooks version. And really the key collaboration there for me was not only with Canterbury University Press, whose experience in publishing I really benefited from, but of course the CAUL Collective. So I really couldn't have done it without the help of Rani in particular, who was the CAUL Collective project officer at that time, and Ash since then, who's taken over the role, but also the collective as a whole. Just being able to get support and advice on those gnarly questions that weren't particularly obvious. So yeah, thank you to the CAUL Collective, and it's been really a privilege to be able to work on this particular project. It's yeah, a valuable resource that I'm proud to be part of. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Rachel. And now we'll hear from Stephen and Julian.
Hi everyone, I'm an open education librarian and Julian is a biochemistry academic, but we actually want to introduce ourselves as third space practitioners today. And, you know, the third space being a term that describes this intersection between academic and professional spheres. And one of our main insights from collaborating in this space is that working in the third space isn't just about an additive, you know, adding skills together. It's not just about providing services to each other. It's more like a greater than the sum of our parts sort of thing. And the special sauce, I think, in this is a sustained two-way mutual learning in project-based work. And we found that it creates new possibilities and practices that are usually, I guess, siloed off by traditional boundaries in higher education. So for us, our third space was the La Trobe e-Bureau, which is a dedicated open education program here. Julian, do you want to talk us through why this way of collaborating made a difference for our OER projects?
Absolutely, Stephen. We can just go into the slide, please.
Sorry, next slide.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm the academic in this partnership, and yeah, I can second everything that Stephen said about the greater than the sum of its parts in terms of the collaboration. As an academic, you'll have some idea, from your teaching experience, what the students require, where there's a dearth of resources in the traditional sense, and what you might like to develop. Developing those sorts of resources as open educational resources is not necessarily straightforward. And if you want to think of them as interventions that can have a real impact, then that requires a little bit of deeper thinking and reflective practice, and that's where that collaboration has come in. And we've got a diagram here, sort of going from that teaching experience all the way through to publishing an open educational resource. And one thing you'll notice is all these sort of loops that come off it, which represent that kind of reflective thought that goes into it. And where the third space collaboration has been really critical is in that, developing that kind of reflective practice to kind of get a little bit more out of the final product, beyond just just increasing equity and access to the resource, but also thinking about how we can widen the scope of it. We can embed sort of more diverse pedagogies, and I think critically, where Stephen has been incredibly helpful with this, is getting me to think a little bit more about, well, what's the intended outcomes that we want from the resource? So sort of incorporating a backward design into how we're doing things. So at every stage, from ideation to formal proposal and drafting, we've incorporated that kind of reflective practice, which has been Stephen and I discussing things. So working out how we can actually produce it and work out how to get around barriers and funding opportunities to increase the scope of what we're doing. Through peer review and critical editing, testing the stuff as we're going. But then at the very end, connecting users to the resource, getting recognition and publicity for it, getting data, feedback data, and we've certainly collaborated on a lot of secondary outputs from this. And look, ideally, what we want is to close that loop as well. So this is what's been really critical. So we produce a product, but obviously the idea is it's going to have an impact on our teaching experience itself. And so we've got sort of a meta iterative process as well. So hopefully we're creating a virtuous loop by doing that. One of the really important things to have is someone who's like what we call a critical friend. So someone who's able to have a look at what we're doing and ask really sort of provocative questions to help drive this process. So I can go to the next slide. And someone, a critical friend, there's no one better, I think, than someone who's got oversight over lots of these sorts of projects. So someone who's maybe a librarian involved in open educational pedagogy and resource production and education design is perfect for an academic who wants to develop these sorts of things. And this collaboration has allowed me to think a lot beyond access and equity. And probably the most provocative question you could ask is, like, well, what's your open education resource going to do that traditional text can't do? Or what can it do that generative AI can't do? And it turns out when you sort of seriously look at that question, it can do quite a lot. The platform is fantastic for incorporating interactivity. So we're able to incorporate multimedia so students can do diagnostic testing. In STEM education, it's really important to have represent a lot of the models that we use and things like that. So being able to embed video and multimedia is really important. Really critical, we found, is to be able to embed teacher presence into our resource. So that can be things like me screencasting solutions to problems for students, but also bringing in my teaching experience and giving advice on how to approach and how to study things, which is something we don't see in a lot of traditional texts. The other thing that's been really important for us is to be able to bring provide a context for learning for the students. So for instance, we've been able to teach for a prism of professional practice, so looking at where students are going, and then providing examples of where that information is being used in professional practice. Got an example here of someone in clinical practice who's talking about maths problems and taking students through it, to incorporating Australian and New Zealand content into the resource. If we just go to the next slide. And probably this is an example of where it can lead, holistically in embedding OER-enabled pedagogy. And we've got our open education resource. That's really influenced my lecture course for first year biology. That lecture course has led to me developing a more authentic assessment around oral presentations. Quite a, we're very happy with this. So sort of, we're pushing students to a really high standard with this. But we've been able to videotape students, so bring them in as co-creators, collaborate with them on that level, and now incorporate that back into the open education resource itself. So I think it's a really great example of that virtuous loop that this kind of collaboration has helped create. I think I'll hand back to Stephen, and you can talk about some of the other benefits we've got out.
Yeah, I've really loved the development of this kind of virtuous loop, and I guess it's a form of what some people call OER-enabled pedagogy. And what I mean by this is that the open text doesn't just sit on its own on a distant reading list or something, but it's actually really closely integrated with teaching practice in an active and an organic way. And that deliberate feedback loop means students are part of the open education life cycle, as co-creators. You can go to the next slide. We're really proud that our open projects are being institutionally recognised, including a major science award and invitations for authored journal articles, international recognition, and successful CAUL grant applications. And I think OERs are a great way to spotlight, especially the more ephemeral or invisible teaching activities that academics do, because OER are tangible resources, and the analytics that come from them can be used as evidence for meeting grant, award, promotion criteria. And here you can see how we've jumped on opportunities from both, I guess, open education land and biochemistry or STEM land, and kind of mix them together to create a whole buffet of wins across our professional world. So something like double the perspective, double the gains, or some game showy thing like that. Next slide, please. So I guess to conclude, we've learned success collaborating in open education is about connecting those dots together. Anyone can Google OER benefits and recite them, but it's only working together in the third space that you can connect those dots in context and practice, that teaching feeds the OER and then the OER feeds back into teaching. And, the other key lessons we've learned are all about committing the time to build that deeper shared understanding and trust, and really putting in weeks, months, many coffees, and building that trust before diving into trying to solve everything straight away, because you'll need that trust to spark that critical friend dynamic, to ask the hard questions of each other, to do reflective practice in a sort of like real, authentic way, and challenge each other's assumptions. And it's working like that in the third space that has got us to where we are now. So next slide, please. And just to finish in the spirit of open collaboration, we're sharing a collection of open artifacts from our project for anyone to reuse and adapt to help do stuff like this. So I'll put the link in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. All right. I hope you have enjoyed as much as I have learning about these different projects. I have a couple of questions I'd like to put to our panel, and then we also welcome questions from the audience. So I will start. Tell me, what role has collaboration played in helping to develop local and Indigenous content to enrich your learning materials? So how have you seen that really come out to enrich what you're doing? Anyone want to jump in and talk about that?
Perhaps I could kick us off there. He Awawhiria is very obviously overtly a collaboration, bringing two worldviews together, and it wouldn't exist without that that meeting of a Western and an Indigenous philosophy. It is the embodiment of giving local context and cultural meaning to the kind of research that we try and do in New Zealand. And whenever we are looking at OERs and whether or not we are going to go ahead with a project, this is one of our major criteria. So if something is giving that local cultural impact and is developed overtly to be fitting with the New Zealand context, then that is where we're going to put our grant money, and that's where we're going to put our energy. It's such an amazing opportunity to be able to create something that is so locally appropriate. And we struggle in New Zealand to get a weight of publications that do that. And so open is perfect, because not only can we create our own that fit the local context, we can also take and adapt other open resources that we can make appropriate for our context.
Thank you. Others would like to jump in. I hear now we're going to our broader panel conversation. I can take off the slides for a moment and we can see people instead. Anyone else like to speak to that question? Kate, go ahead.
I'd like to just add to what Rachel, what Sarah was saying, and say that, you know, if it wasn't for the CAUL collective, I don't think our project would have been able to get off the ground. And it's partly because of that local and Indigenous focus that the collective has. Stuff that's from New Zealand is pretty niche, and stuff that's about law is really niche. And so to be able to find a platform that we can publish these really niche subject areas on is just, you know, what has made it a successful project. Well, we hope it will be successful. I mean, looking at the Australian one, it definitely will be. And so yeah, I think that's part of it too, is that CAUL collective has opened up some doors for us to be able to put our very niche products into. Yeah.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that question?
I might jump in there a little bit just about local content. In the STEM disciplines, particularly say biochemistry, molecular biology, my one, you could be forgiven as a student for thinking that unless you're in Oxford or Cambridge or Heidelberg or somewhere that, you know, or MIT, that it's not possible to kind of work in the discipline. And so one of the problems that we might have is students just not engaging in material. This is something we think a lot about, but we can use the open education format to kind of address that, so we can embed local content. And there's amazing work being done in Australia and New Zealand that we can highlight through that won't be in traditional text, or they won't necessarily find in a Google search. And that's been really helpful, I think, in getting students to kind of relate to the discipline and engage a little bit more with it. But so that's sort of come about, I think, by me just talking very openly about all sorts of problems that we've got with students' engagement, and then sort of thinking about how we can use the media to kind of solve that.
Thank you. And that power of bringing in the collaboration of students, the learners that we're doing all of this work for is incredible. So thank you for highlighting that. I want to build on something that I think Kate, well, there have been several allusions to the things that the CAUL collective has brought to the table. So a piece of it, of course, is the publishing platform with Pressbooks. I'd love to hear from the project teams, what are other ways that the CAUL collective has provided support and guidance, or, you know, things that have helped you be able to do what you've done in your projects?
I can probably jump in there, Julie. Over the last couple of years, I've seen an amazing amount of content shared through what the CAUL have created a publishing workflow. So they've made an openly available resource that all institutions and others beyond the collective are able to use. It's a wonderful resource. They've also offered communities of practice. So I think roughly once a month, we all get together for communities of practice. And this is for not only librarians, but also academic authors. We have a series of guest webinars and those sorts of things as well. And I also wanted to reiterate how wonderful the PD opportunity was that a couple of people have already mentioned today. I think Kate and Tracy had done that, and I think 4 or 5 librarians at my university have also done that PD training, and it was absolutely fantastic. I went into it thinking I already knew pretty much all of the content, but I still learned things and made the most amazing connections with new colleagues. So that's from our perspective. There's some really amazing things that CAUL are doing in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to what Alice says. The 12-week course that CAUL provides has a drop-in session after on a different day from when the guest lecturer has done their session. And it's during these drop-in sessions that you get to ask all sorts of tricky questions from a range of different experts. So you had this pool of shared OER knowledge and all sorts of projects of different kinds that you could ask problems of and nut out all those licensing and technology aspects about your particular project. So it was also useful for those that are doing OERs, but also those with sort of higher management skills who need to advocate for policy change. So I think the range of different experts was the benefit of the whole program, and definitely we're going to try and recommend more of my colleagues join that particular opportunity when it runs again next year.
Thank you, Tracy. We do have a couple of questions from the audience and a couple of minutes longer, so I want to make sure that we're making time for that. So this comes from Christopher Dobson. Could any of you speak to how you have addressed and advocated for accessibility with your authors and with prospective faculty?
Yeah, I would say a bit about that. So in my conversations with the Canterbury University Press about how Whiwhiria, we found that we were both that improving accessibility was a focus for both of us. I think that the editors there had done some professional development through the Institute of Professional Editors in Australia, New Zealand, and there was a big focus on improving accessibility. So we've had some conversations around that. The work that we've done on how Whiwhiria so far has not resulted in a fully accessible publication as much as we would like, and that's partly the way it's developed. And that's something we'll work on in future, but it's very much something that I promote now with current and future upcoming projects. And what I've found really helpful actually is the CAUL Collective's publishing workflow, which Alice mentioned just before, has a section about accessibility. It has checklists, it has links to information, and I make sure I point authors to that very early on as one of our sort of priority criteria. So yeah, it's something that yeah, we haven't done perfectly, and we'll continue to work on and improve with that as that information from CAUL as our sort of foundation. Yeah.
Thank you. One more question, and then we will wrap up. A question for everyone on the panel. Is there any mechanism you've been able to identify that allows you to track usage of the OERs outside of the Pressbooks platform on your IR?
For us, putting the OER in Open Textbook Library has been absolutely decisive and led to 3 international reviews from US scholars, which Julian tells me that getting that overseas recognition is extremely valuable, and we've been able to use that in promotion applications, award applications. I think probably included it in that Science Education Award, Julian.
Yeah, it's actually, Stephen, it's a great form of peer review as well of your teaching, and those sorts of comments, and they've been great in improving the resource, I think. So yeah, I encourage as much critical feedback as possible on this.
Excellent. Go ahead.
I'd also echo that too. Yeah, and also OER Commons is another great place to share your resources, and we're setting up an Australian New Zealand group there at the moment, so stay tuned for more information on that. And also one other thing that we've done is use Looker Studio to create quite a big data dashboard for all of our resources, and I know that CAUL are very enthusiastic about progressing that for the CAUL catalogue of publications as well.
Excellent, thank you. Unfortunately, it is time for us to wrap up. And so I am sharing my screen just to do a couple of quick things. So first off, thank you to everyone who has joined us and to our panelists. We will be sending out a webinar follow-up email and with resources, and then the recording and a list of related resources that have been shared will be part of a follow-up once we have the opportunity to get the recording transcribed. So look out for those things in the next week. And then we also do have another webinar coming up at the beginning of December. The timing on this one is not quite as amenable for our Australian folks, but we're trying to balance across our global world. But invite you to come to that one, and then we will also be looking at other opportunities and engaging this community further as we go. So thank you again. We appreciate you all being here, and look forward to being able to continue this conversation and thus like it in the future. So thank you to our panelists. If we were all in the room, I would ask for an applause for everyone for coming, but we are grateful for your being here. And have a great rest of your day for the Australian folks and New Zealand folks, and a good evening for the folks in North America. So thank you everyone for being here.